One very powerful modeling tool in Blender is the Loop Cut and Slide tool. To use it, simply go to the Quick Tools menu on the left while in edit mode and select it. Then, hover over your mesh with your cursor and you'll notice a yellow indicator that seems to loop around your mesh in various ways. If you left click, you'll notice that the Loop Cut has created a new loop of edges around your mesh where the indicator was, inserting new vertices wherever necessary. This is very handy for manually increasing the number of polygons in certain parts of your mesh for modeling. So that's the Loop Cut part of the tool, but what about the Slide part of the tool? Well, for that, all you have to do is left-click drag instead. You'll notice that instead of immediately creating the loop cut in the middle, it allows you to slide the loop along your mesh before letting go of left-click. The placement of your loop cut will then correspond to wherever you dragged it along the mesh. If you happen to start dragging the loop cut on accident and would prefer to cut your mesh along the middle after all, simply right-click before letting go of left-click to cancel the slide. If you notice in the bottom left-hand corner, after you've created a loop cut, an operator panel will appear that you can expand. This panel will include settings that will affect what your recently performed loop cut will do. For example, you can increase or decrease the number of cuts along your mesh, smooth your mesh based on a falloff, or slide to adjust your loop cut along your mesh with the factor value. For hotkey users, simply press Ctrl R. However, I should mention that if you already have the loop cut tool selected, Ctrl R will simply act as a left-click action, entering the tool into slide mode. So I recommend using the hotkey without the tool selected. Now, there are a few key differences between hotkey users and toolbar users for this particular tool. Assuming you do not have the loop cut tool selected and you press Ctrl R, you will also be able to very easily change the number of cuts you make by using the scroll wheel. This bypasses the need to open the operator panel to change the number of cuts. When left-clicking with the Ctrl R hotkey, you'll also notice that it automatically enters slide mode instead of creating a loop cut immediately like the toolbar tool does. Simply right-click to default the loop cut back to the middle of the section you cut, or left-click to confirm your slide position. Real quick, let's take a look at the practical application of the loop cut tool. For this, we're going to go ahead and make a chair. First thing I'll do is take my cube and scale it down so it's flatter. Then I can take the loop cut tool and cut my mesh in a few places that will give me more faces in particular areas of the mesh that I want to work with. For example, we're going to have to add the back of the chair as well as the legs of the chair. So let's make sure we have 4 faces we can choose from for the legs, as well as a row of faces for the back. From here, I can use the extrude tool, which will be covered in its own video, to add geometry to my mesh along my selection. I hope this demonstrates how useful the loop cut tool can be for modeling. The Bevel tool is very helpful in 3D modeling because it allows you to keep the realism in your hard edges. In real life, no edge is perfectly sharp like it is in the flat shaded cube that we have here, for example. Because no edge is perfectly sharp, most of the time you're going to want to bevel it in some way to keep the edges hard but realistic. So let's demonstrate what beveling is. There are 2 ways to bevel. You can either use the Bevel tool in edit mode, or you can use the bevel modifier. To use the tool, simply select the tool in the Quick Tools menu on the left while in edit mode. Let's go ahead and hit A to select all of our mesh. Then left-click drag anywhere in the viewport to begin adding a bevel to your selection. Let go of left-click to confirm. For hotkey users, you can press Ctrl B. As usual, right-click to cancel and left-click to confirm. Like many tools, after you confirm the action, an operator panel will appear in the bottom left. This gives you several more settings to tweak before finalizing the action. For example, you can change the width type, which are simply different ways of calculating the amount of bevel. The width is the value you can left-click drag to adjust the bevel amount. As for segments, this setting lets you change the resolution of the bevel, as the more segments you have, the rounder your corners can be, and profile adjusts the curvature of your beveled edges. Checking vertex only option will only bevel using vertices instead of edges as the source geometry. This will look very different, but can be helpful for certain situations. For hotkey users, you can also press Ctrl-Shift-B instead of Ctrl-B to access the vertex-only bevel directly. Most of the other settings are perfectly fine at default values, but material is a very powerful one that I want to talk about real quick. To demonstrate what this does, let's go ahead and add a few materials to our object by pressing the plus key in the Materials tab of our Properties editor. We can then change the color of each material and set our viewport to rendered mode here. Let's go ahead and bevel the mesh once more in edit mode and open the operator panel. The material index allows you to use a different material in your object material list to do cool things like this. The material index is correlated to the material's position in the list. Another way to bevel is with the bevel modifier. Simply go to the wrench icon for the Modifiers tab and select Bevel Modifier from the drop-down menu. You can see that this has very similar settings as the Bevel Tool operator panel. One important setting that differs is the limit method. This is how you can set the threshold for when the modifier should bevel your mesh. For example, by default, the limit method is none, which means it will indiscriminately bevel every edge loop or vertex in your mesh. However, if you limit by angle, you can specify to only bevel corners that exceed a certain angle. To demonstrate this, if we give this mesh a more varied shape, you'll notice that changing this value allows us to selectively bevel certain corners, but not others. On the other hand, weight and vertex groups allow you to hand-pick which corners get beveled. As with all modifiers, the bevel modifier is non-destructive, allowing you to work with your original mesh while still having bevel applied on top of your edits with no consequence. The knife tool is a modeling tool you can use to form new edge loops and vertices. To use it, simply go into the modeling workspace or go into edit mode, then select the knife tool from the Quick Tools menu on the left. From there, you can either left-click drag or tap left-click to begin cutting into your mesh. You may notice at this time that there is still a purplish-pinkish line attached to your cursor after drawing. To disengage this knife tool drawing mode, simply double left-click or press E. This will then allow you to continue drawing if you so choose. However, I do warn you not to right-click during this stage, as it will cancel the cuts you have just made. To fully confirm the cuts you have made, simply press spacebar or enter. As you can see, the visual style of the edge loops and vertices you have drawn have now matched the original mesh. This means they are fully applied. For further details about the knife tool, simply reference the bottom bar of the UI while you have the knife tool activated. Now, if you've ever wanted to cut anything in half, similar to a cross-section, you would want to use the bisect tool, one of the knife tool's subtools. To use it, simply left-click drag the knife tool in the Quick Tools menu on the left. This will open up a submenu that includes bisect. Hover over the bisect option and release your left-click. From here, you can simply draw a line or cut across your mesh. This will represent where you want to cut your mesh in half. Afterwards, a gizmo should appear that will allow you to adjust your cut. However, the most important settings are in the operator panel in the bottom left-hand corner. Simply expand this and adjust the settings as you see fit. But most importantly, these checkboxes will allow you to fill the face that you cut open, as well as select which side of the cut you would like to keep. Both the knife tool and the bisect tool can be very helpful for editing your mesh.
Shut up and sit down.